Hello everyone, welcome to another Local Media Association webinar. I'm Peter Conti, Sales and Marketing Director for LMA. And today's webinar is From Here to $72 billion, what will drive mobile advertising over the next half decade? And our presenter is Michael Boland. He's the Chief Analyst at BIA Kelsey. Hello, Michael.
Hi, Peter. Thanks for having me. So confirmation that you can see my screen okay?
Yep, looks good.
Okay. Thank you, Peter, for the intro. And hello, everyone. So as Peter mentioned, I'm Mike Boland, and I'm Chief Analyst at BI Kelsey, and I'm very excited to be here today to talk about our latest findings on mobile advertising and revenues and the drivers for that and all the trends that kind of stand behind the numbers. So before I begin, quick bit about BI Kelsey for those unfamiliar. It's a market research and consulting firm that focuses on all things local. So in that way, it's very much aligned with the LMA, and we work with the LMA in lots of ways and have a kind of long-standing mutual appreciation. And the local expertise that we kind of cultivate takes form in many different ways that you can see here on this slide, and I won't read through all of these, but if you have any questions, you can contact me at mboland@bikelsey.com, and I'll show my contact information again at the end of this presentation. So quick bit about me. I'm a 10-year industry analyst, former tech journalist. My focus areas are mobile, social, and emerging technology. And one of the things that I do as an analyst, or I should say I do this twice per year, is participation in our local advertising forecast, and of course that's the topic today. So what we do is myself and all of my colleagues, we break apart into our respective coverage areas, and we spend weeks crunching numbers, going through the kind of methodology and all the kind of key inputs in the marketplace, and then we bring all that together in what is a cross-media advertising revenue forecast. And that includes lots of different stuff. It's all forms of media that can be localized. It's television, it's radio, it's newspapers, yellow pages, all that good stuff. But what I decided to do this time is that the mobile portion that I work on, I decided that since mobile is so impactful and since it's changing so rapidly, to give it a standalone treatment. So in addition to it's part of that overall big forecast I mentioned, for the first time this year we have peeled off a standalone narrative drill down in the form of a long white paper, which is essentially what I'm going to be going over today. So I mentioned that as just kind of background of today's presentation, and if you're interested in that white paper, it's available for free on the BI Kelsey website. So a bit about the methodology. I don't want to bore you with a methodology slide at the onset, so I'll just mention this briefly. We use a combination of a top-down and a bottom-up methodology of market forecasting, for those of you familiar with those kind of marketing segment techniques. We don't include tablets. I wanted to make sure that's clear at the onset. Several strategic reasons for that I won't go into now in the interest of time, but there's a link that's provided at the bottom of this slide that you can read more about our reasons for not including tablets or lumping them together with mobile. And I'll also say, speaking of which, that I'm glad to make this deck available. Peter mentioned that the deck will be available as a PDF to anyone that wants it. It's very data rich, and I'm going to be going through it quickly. So don't feel the need to have to jot everything down quickly, because it's available for you to digest at your own pace. So but before we get into the numbers, it's important to define what we mean when we use words like local and location targeting. I think local is one of those words that's highly kind of misused because it's so open-ended. There are so many different connotations. So I just feel the need to define it before going into the numbers. So in mobile, we essentially see several different flavors of location-targeted tactics that will classify an ad as localized and be counted in our forecast as such. So the first one is kind of the connotation most people have when they hear about location targeted, and that's when an ad or an ad campaign is programmed to be shown to users within a specific geographic radius. Now, in addition to where the ad shows up, equally important is what the ad contains. So local calls to action that are meant to facilitate or drive kind of offline conversions that happen locally. And not just calls to action like calling a store, getting directions, but also things that drill down a little further, such as product information or inventory data. Google is one example of this. They're increasingly doing this with things like product listings ad to tell you how many are on the shelf right now. That type of stuff that's included within an ad unit will likewise count an ad as being local in our methodology. Also, the ad creative itself, having geographic triggers within the ad creative or in the copy, things like dynamic distance feeds, or verbiage that indicates kind of proximity to a certain advertiser, and not just location kind of copy, like where you are and where the closest advertiser is, but also location-related variables is one that's always forgotten. Things like weather. This is one just example of a Crunch Fitness ad in New York that compels people to come in and run on the treadmill instead of running out in the rain. And this is triggered, obviously, when certain weather patterns will indicate that ad should be shown. And then lastly, audience targeting is an important one, because audience targeting isn't just about showing an ad to someone based on where they're standing right now, but using location as a long-standing overall tool to basically profile users. So not just where I'm standing now, but what were the last 50 places I visited? And what does that say about me as a consumer? Am I a student? Am I a business traveler? Am I a soccer mom? Being able to profile users as a function of the places they go, and using location to kind of help build those profiles, which can then be used for ongoing behavioral targeting. It's another kind of key flavor of location targeting. So now, on to the numbers. So here are our top-level findings from our forecast. Overall, mobile advertising in the U.S. will grow from $33 billion in 2016 to $72 billion by 2021, and the location-targeted portion of that spend, importantly, will grow from 38% of the total to 45% by 2021. And there are three reasons for this growth that I've been examining. The first is consumer usage. So local intent skews higher on the mobile device than on a lot of other media, including desktop. Google, for example, reports that 30% of searches have explicit local intent. On the desktop, that intent is around 11% of searches. So number two, advertiser alignment with that consumer behavior reality. So Madison Avenue, as many of us know, tends to trail behind usage behavior and eyeballs, but they're slowly catching up to create more campaigns and more campaign tactics, like we saw on the previous slide. And then lastly, premium. So location-targeted ads, when executed right, tend to perform better, and that higher performance can lead to higher ad rates, which further increases the dollars being spent on location-targeted mobile ads and the share shift you see demonstrated on this slide. So further drilling down, if you take the localized portion of that ad spend, so the orange part of this slide, that can be further subdivided by the source of the spend. So that includes small businesses as well as national advertisers that are localizing their campaigns. So at this early stage, or relatively early stage of kind of mobile marketing adoption, it's mostly the latter, the brand advertisers that are localizing. And that's because they tend to be earlier adopters of emerging technology compared to small businesses, and that kind of SMB segment is still catching up. Now to switch gears a bit, to talk about ad formats. So I think that there's a lot of interesting trending we're seeing with ad formats that I think is telling of where things are going in mobile. So forget about location targeting for now. This pans back to the overall U.S. mobile spending. So that $32 billion I first mentioned, that's growing to $72 billion. And instead of segmenting it by location targeting versus non-location targeting, we're now going to segment that by ad format. So that includes things like search and display and messaging and social ads. And the biggest headline here, and I'm going to go through each of these one by one, but the biggest headline is that search, which is now the leading mobile ad format and has been for a while, will start to lose share over time to some of these emerging formats, such as native social advertising and messaging. So like I said, let's break these down kind of one by one. So first, zeroing in on search as a format. So mobile search ad revenues in the U.S. will grow from roughly $14 billion last year to about $23 billion by 2021. And mobile search has really again, long dominated mobile advertising because of its high kind of lean forward, as I like to say, commercial intent. And that's made it an attractive venue to incorporate advertising, which in turn shows a lot of strong performance metrics. So for example, mobile search click-through rates are 3% on average, which is about 10x greater than that of a display ad click-through rates. But the thing that's kind of challenging search in some ways is that the smartphone's orientation towards apps has resulted in search volume declines and average CPC declines because most people consume search through the browser, and the smartphone has, of course, proven to be a more app-centric experience. So Google has actually been working hard over the last 5 years or so to kind of adapt to this more app-based world and to counterbalance the search volume declines by reaching users at other moments, or what it likes to call micro moments. And I'll circle back to that concept in a bit, but in the meantime, the key point here is that search as we know it, which is typing into a search box and getting 10 blue links, is actually on the decline in mobile, and its ad revenue share is going down. Though at this point, again, it's still the most dominant format. So next is display, or what we're calling traditional display, which is essentially banner ads. And there is some display advertising that we're counting separately under the native social category that I'll go over in a bit, but the category on this slide is traditional graphical banner ads. So that's currently $5.1 billion, growing to $12.9 billion in 2021. And that's moderate growth, but it's not as fast as some of the other formats we're measuring. And that's mostly due to its kind of maturity. Just like with search, I think many factors threaten traditional display, and that includes the rise of better performing native social ads, which again I'll go over in a minute, and also things like ad blockers. But the format spending is primarily, I think, resulting from habit. Many kind of participants of the digital ad ecosystem have really gotten comfortable with display ads. But in my opinion, it's mostly a holdover from the desktop era of online ads, and I'm mostly bearish on this category. It's not as conducive to smaller screens. They're delivered in a very desktop-like way and often with kind of imprecise targeting. They tend to be very interruptive on smaller screen experiences. And I'll talk about that a bit more when going over native social, because I think that format kind of contrasts with this principle. But moving on, the next format I want to go over is messaging, and messaging is very interesting. As you see here, it's kind of a very small share of the overall mobile ad pie, but this used to be the category of our forecast devoted to SMS, but we've reclassified it to include the over-the-top messaging apps that are growing in prevalence, such as Facebook Messenger, which now has over 1 billion active users. And it's not just the peer-to-peer use that you see on messaging apps, like friends kind of texting each other, but it's growing as a use case for messaging businesses to qualify a business decision or even to transact. And that's similar to the conversational commerce trend that you've likely heard about. And I have lots of separate published insights on that topic if anyone's interested. But for now, here, some of the leading indicators of this category's growth include millennials, which they have an affinity for kind of these messaging interfaces. And then also we see a lot of overseas use of messaging apps to transact with local businesses, and I believe that's a leading indicator of its growth in the US. And that includes things like WeChat in China and WhatsApp in Europe, which are very kind of prominent. But in the U.S., getting down to these numbers, we're pegging the ad spend happening within these messaging environments to be $350 million last year, growing to $4.5 billion in 2021, and that translates to roughly 1.1% of the total ad pie, growing to 6.2% in 2021. So again, a small share, but one that's kind of moving pretty quickly and worth watching. So next is video, or actually what we're calling traditional video, which is essentially pre-roll ads. And again, just like I mentioned with traditional display, there are other types of videos that we're measuring separately in the native social category that I'm going to go over last. But this category just measures traditional pre-roll video ads. And there we see revenues of $2.8 billion, which we project to grow to $7.2 billion by 2021. And most of these revenues go to YouTube, as it's really taken a leading position in mobile video consumption. But it's interesting. Here the question often arises, why doesn't video have a larger share? And a lot of people are bullish on video, mobile video, due to the trend towards larger screens and mobile broadband like 5G network rollouts. But our numbers here kind of limit that to some degree due to the viewing time on small screens, as well as the medium's propensity towards short-form clips. That's often the kind of most popular or prevalent format of viewing organic video within mobile. So that in turn limits ad inventory. And pre-roll ads are also kind of seen as obtrusive in the mobile environment, especially within kind of short mobile video clips. So the bottom line is essentially that video will grow in mobile, but mostly outside of this traditional kind of pre-roll format. And I'll circle back to that again when talking about native social, because I think a lot of video is going to be seen there as well. So now on to native social. I guess I've alluded to this several times so far. So I guess the best thing to do is to define it first. So what is native social advertising? So it's essentially graphical and multimedia and textual content that is merged into the organic feed-based interfaces of mobile social apps. So it's essentially scrolling interfaces like Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and LinkedIn and a few others. And one key point about that scrolling interface is that it has inventory advantages. So in other words, mobile screens in general lack screen real estate for traditional banner ads, which go on the top or a side banner. And again, that's something that we saw prevalent on the desktop. But in these mobile kind of feed-based social apps, this kind of vertically scrolling feed, think of it like the Facebook news feed, holds greater capacity for ad inventory. So that's just one of its many advantages. In addition to that kind of format and orientation, native social ads are defined by how they're targeted. So they're placed based on the targeting parameters like granular signals within the social graph. So think of it like things like your past behavior, like your Facebook likes, or social connections to people in groups, and all of these things that are kind of brought together to make this kind of precise and effective targeting capabilities. And that's really bearing out in the ad performance metrics shown by Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat and others. So a quick example of how this is playing out. So you might see, Instagram photography, highly crafted photography that incorporates a lifestyle brand. And then that's merged into Instagram's vertical and time-based feed as a sponsored post. And that brand, whoever it is, say it's Ray-Ban, can create those images and post them for free on its own Instagram account, which all of its followers can see. But then it can also pay to amplify that and have those, again, very kind of native and kind of artfully crafted campaigns distributed to other Instagram users in targeted ways, and that's kind of the paid part. Another quick example is Heineken. It's worked with Snapchat on the stories format, which involves a location-based and temporal campaign that aggregates all of the snaps in and around an event like Coachella. This is actually something they did last year. And Snapchat, based on its size and its popularity, is delivering these television-sized audiences with this stories format. So it's really resonating with a lot of advertisers and showing a lot of advantages in targeting and reach and performance. And another just quick advantage I'll mention for native social is millennials' affinity for these apps. So native social ads really resonate with millennials because they tie in a brand experience in more genuine ways instead of ads that are interruptive. Millennials famously don't like being told what to do or what to think, and they're largely untrusting of traditional advertising. So this more kind of native format has proven to just really resonate with them. So in closing, I want to just kind of sum up some key takeaways here. So one, search as we know it is deteriorating, and the key term there is as we know it. Google is doing a lot to evolve search, to live in this more mobile app-based world, as I mentioned. And that's behind its micro-moments construct I alluded to earlier. And it also translates to proactively sending users information rather than waiting for them to search. And to do that, Google also is working on becoming a more robust artificial intelligence tool. And that ties in a separate but related topic, which is the kind of rise of the voice-based personal assistant apps like Siri and Amazon Alexa. And that's going to be a key battleground in the coming years in mobile search. And I think that whole area, again, it's separate, it's a related topic, and I have lots of presentations and published commentary elsewhere on that that I'd be glad to provide anyone. But the short version is that, Google, I believe, is going to be very well positioned among these kind of push-based personal assistant apps because it has better data from its knowledge graph and its position as being the world's search engine for the past 15 years. So it's really best positioned to build that kind of AI-driven personal assistant app based in most cases on voice search. So in the meantime, the point is watch closely what Google's doing because that'll be a leading indicator of, I think, where the market's going and where kind of winning strategies may reside in terms of engaging mobile users. Number two, native social is going to be a big opportunity, and it's going to continue to gain market share. I just went over that, of course, in the previous slide, so I'll skip that point here in the interest of time. And then lastly, offline commerce. It really underlies this entire discussion. The principle of online to offline, or what we call O2O, I think is really central to the mobile local ad opportunity. And the way the numbers break down is that total offline consumer spending in the U.S. is about $7 trillion per year. And to put that into perspective, e-commerce is only about $400 million. So the name of the game really is to have mobile ad strategies that aim for that much larger offline pie, and the path to purchase, the consumer path to purchase, really resides in that progression from online engagement, including, of course, mobile, to that offline conversion. So localized ad strategies should do the same, and that, of course, happens through a lot of the things I went over earlier, call to action buttons that let consumers book or reserve or buy or map or call right within an ad unit. And it also involves tracking the resulting conversions, which gets into the art of attribution, which is an entirely separate but related topic, and glad to discuss that separately with anyone interested. So before we wrap, a quick shout out to BI Kelsey's next event. This will be the first in a series of local impact events, and it's the next chance to kind of bring everyone together and unpack key topics such as everything I just went over, and several other impactful areas of analysis. So this will be taking place April 5th in Dallas, and you can go to the BI Kelsey website to find out more, and then the direct link is actually shown right there on this slide as well. So I will put a period there. I hope this has been valuable. I think I went over a lot of data and did it fairly quickly, so I probably only scratched the surface, but hopefully introduced some topics. And I'm glad to go deeper with anyone interested. My email address is here for any follow-up questions or comments, and at this point I will pass it back to Peter. So thank you for your time.
Okay, Michael, thank you very much. I think that was really comprehensive. You did cover a lot of ground in the 20 minutes, and I neglected to mention at the beginning of the webinar that this is one of our new Quick Bites webinars, 20-minute webinars. Would love to hear your comments if you take the exit survey, which we appreciate you doing. Let us know how you like the new format. Thank you, Michael.
You bet. Thank you for having me, Peter. Thank you, everyone, for listening.